You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 77. Today I'll be talking to Kristen Liu-Wong. Alright, so my name is Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairdspodcast.com, but the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're really enjoying the show and want to help support what I'm doing here in an even bigger way, check out the Art Affairs Patreon. Not only does it give you an opportunity to help keep the show going, but there are several community-oriented benefits as well, like getting early access to episodes and suggesting questions for upcoming guests. You can find all the information about that at patreon.com/artaffairs. You can also connect with the show on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. All right, so today's guest is artist Kristen Liu-Wong. Kristen has such an incredibly distinctive style. And while her work often has a bright and shiny appearance on the exterior, the themes that she deals with within are anything but that. We talk on the show about the unflinching boldness of the complex themes in her work, as well as how she first discovered her creative voice in college, her most recent show at Super Chief Gallery, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Kristen Liu-Wong. Kristen, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, so let's dive into your background a little bit. And I know that you grew up in the Bay Area.
I'm from San Francisco.
Were you in San Francisco proper, or was it like somewhere else in the suburbs?
Yeah, San Francisco in the city. Raised right above Chinatown, kind of Chinatown, Nob Hill area, like right on the edge between those two neighborhoods.
Okay, and what was that? I mean, did you spend a lot of time... I guess living in such an urban environment, did you ever have an opportunity to spend time in nature or kind of get out of the city?
I mean, we definitely, like my mom and grandma, I was raised by my mom and grandma with my older sister. And so I'm by no means like Mrs. Nature. Like I've never been camping, terrified of moths, but like I was lucky enough to be able to visit like the redwoods and like, you know, Monterey Bay and like see the kelp forests and stuff. But, and other things. And then I guess Golden Gate Park is kind of nature-y. So there are ferns. But not the best at like outdoor stuff.
Yeah. No, and you mentioned that you were raised by your mom and your grandmother. And from what I understand, your parents were divorced when you were really young, which was like my experience as well. My parents divorced when I was 2. So nice Debbie Downer moment to start the show.
Yeah. Both children of divorce, yes.
Yeah, and like I never really knew what a traditional nuclear family, experience was like. And from what I understand, being raised by your mother and grandmother, that was very maternal kind of upbringing, which is similar to me. So I mean, if you're comfortable, talking about it, did you actually still have a relationship in some form with your father? Was he still a part of your life at all?
No, it was not a good divorce. It was a very, very acrimonious divorce. Like, and there were reasons, like active reasons that they divorced, So it was just, and like there was a custody battle too. So it was actually years long. And like there were visitations that we had to go to and like running away from visitation. It was just like not a good thing. So, eventually my mom got full custody and, so I really don't have anything to do with my father. He has a new family. So that's all I know.
And what kind of work did your mother and grandmother do? I think they were teachers, right?
Yeah, my grandmother was a kindergarten teacher, and my mom, she still is an elementary art school teacher.
Nice. And so with your mom being an art teacher, did you have a lot of exposure to the arts as a kid? Is it something that you had kind of had around you?
Yeah, I was really lucky in that way. My mom, she was a textile major and she finished going to college when, raising us. So we were like lucky enough to always be able to go to like San Francisco State, and like she would bring us to like her art history lectures, and I would help her like draw the little slides while like my sister would take notes, or like she would have us like thread the loom, because we had the little finger. So we would like help her, and like she would always take us to like free art days at the museum, or like sign us up for like the library summer reading program. So I do feel like growing up in San Francisco and having like a mom who actively encouraged that interest really obviously benefited me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So how did you first become interested in making art yourself? Was it something that you took to at a young age?
I think I was always drawn to drawing and doing that, and like I would copy Disney cartoons, how everyone does, or I would copy the drawings at the beginning of Redwall books, like in the chapters, and I was like obsessed with that. But I didn't really seriously start thinking about going into art until probably and like later in high school, when you kind of think about like what colleges you're going to apply to. And like for a while I was really into ER, 90s baby. And my aunt was a pediatrician. So for a while I thought I wanted to be an ophthalmologist, like an eye surgeon. Okay. I should not be an eye surgeon. Like, luckily I realized that before wasting any time or money. But like, yeah, I was like, well, in high school, I really realized that like art makes me like feel confident. I really love it. And I seem to be kind of good at it, like not like the best, but like good enough that like I was like, maybe I'll try and give it a go. And I was like, there's always like, even if my own art career doesn't work out, I think it's really valuable to be a teacher and encourage like art education and things like that. So I was like, if I can't even have my own art career, like I'll still go to art school and like maybe get like an education degree too. So if that doesn't work out. So yeah, I kind of just decided to apply to art school and see if I got in anywhere. And I got into Pratt, which I wasn't completely expecting, and just went. And yeah.
Was your mother supportive of that path for you?
Yeah, my mom was, and so was my grandmother. Like my grandmother was kind of like, oh, you guys got, like me and my sister was an art history English major at Tufts, but like it's still like art and English. And she was like, oh, you guys had such good grades. You're so smart. Like you could have been, but she was still like okay with it, ultimately. Cause like as long as we like do something, Yeah, like as long as we go to college.
You mentioned going to Pratt, and I think you're the fourth person on the show that went to Pratt, so definitely in good company. But didn't you go to like 17? So did you like graduate early? Were you like a prodigy?
No, I'm no prodigy. God no. I'm just like, I was born in September, so I'm like a little younger for my class group. But like, okay. Yeah, just like no, not a prodigy.
Okay.
Prodigy.
I saw that you went there at 17. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
she must have been great at school.
No. I did turn 18 in New York, which was kind of fun.
Yeah. So you went to Pratt for illustration. Your focus was illustration. What was your career goal at that point? Were you aiming to what were you aiming to do with a degree in illustration?
Well, when I was like looking at different majors, I was growing up in SF, you see like Giant Robot, you see like Juxtapose, you see High Fructose, and like a lot of my favorite artists also worked as illustrators, like it wasn't necessarily like the fine artists that I was like looking up to at that time when I was like picking degrees. And I was like, well, like I love reading. I feel like I'm kind of a more literal person, like the way I think and the way I tell stories. So I just decided to try illustration, because like Alex Pardee did illustration, like James Jean did illustration, Tara McPherson did illustration, like Skinner did illustration, like I really looked at like Barry McGee and Margaret Kilgallen too, and they like they have like kind of more lowbrow influences too, so I just felt drawn to that.
And so was your goal similar to theirs, to become a gallery artist that also does, illustration work as well?
I didn't really I kind of just was hoping for the best, honestly. I was like, if someone hires me as an illustrator, that's great. I kind of wasn't expecting necessarily to get gallery shows at all. I thought I may have to be become a teacher, because I know how hard it is to like have like a working career as an artist, you know, like, and the pay is not regular, like it's very unstable. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of have been like trying to take whatever opportunities are presented to me and make the best of them. And that's kind of just led me here.
Awesome. Yeah. And from what I understand, you sort of experienced an enormous amount of creative growth while you were at school. And from what I read, you mostly were just drawing like ink drawings of engines when you first started school. And
yeah.
then, weren't super comfortable with color or any of that.
Yeah, I was really nervous about using color. I like for high school, you know, I was in AP art, and you have to choose like what your portfolio is going to be. So I did all like black and white engine drawings as my like portfolio thing. Like I only used color if I was just using markers, but not even really, like I was just really uncomfortable with it. But Pratt, they really force you out of your comfort zone. You know, their first year is foundation year, where everyone has to take like a base layer of classes. So you all have to do foundation drawing, like light color design, like video, like sculpture, and just like try everything. And so I was like taking light color and design, and that like made me more comfortable with color, like learning how color works and like seeing that it is possible to work with and like play with and like do things with. And yeah, and then I was lucky enough to have some really good professors too, like my junior year and senior year. And yeah, I think school it's like anything. Like you can have a terrible time, or you could try and make the most of it. And it's like I'm still paying my loans, you know. Like like Pratt didn't even give me my degree for a while, because I think they said I like returned a library book late or something, so I like didn't get my degree for like 3 years, and then they like sent it in the mail, and I was like, oh shit, I didn't even realize they never sent it. But you know, I have my degree now. So
because of a library book? How bizarre.
I had like some sort of like outstanding fee or something. And I'm like bad at like checking my mail. So like I guess I didn't realize, and like, but it's fine, you know.
That's amazing. So I guess, I mean, looking back, how do you feel about your time at art school? Do you feel like it was a fulfilling experience? I mean, it sounds like you got a lot of growth out of it.
Yeah.
I guess in like today's world, would you encourage people to consider art school as a path?
I'm the sort of person where I really benefit from like structure, and I think if you can have the opportunity to learn more, like you should take it, you know. So I met some of like my best friends from there. I met so many artists who I still like talk to and like occasionally work with from like going to Pratt, and like there were like also downsides, you know, and stuff, but I think overall it was a really valuable like educational experience. But yeah, some artists don't need art school, but I'm the type of person where like I like having an assignment and then like doing well at the assignment and like turning the assignment in on time. Like I'm still like kind of like a worry wart about deadlines and stuff. I'm just like complete nerd, so I fucking like school. I don't know.
We just need to take care of the cancel the student debt situation.
Yeah. I would prefer not to have Pratt and the government own me for the rest of my life,
right,
but you know.
Right. So after graduating, it seems like you stayed in Brooklyn for at least a brief period before you moved back to the West Coast.
Yeah, a couple years. I stayed there for 2 years after I graduated, and
were you just hoping to like stick around New York and see what that would be like?
Kind of. Yeah, New York's really fun when you're like young and in your 20s, and I had a lot of friends there, and I got a studio job at a printmaking studio right out of graduation. So yeah, but then there was one really brutal winter in New York, and like my best friend was moving to LA, and like I was like, man, fuck this. And like I had kind of had more luck showing in galleries out here anyway, so I was like, I'll try LA.
And what were you doing at that print studio? Because I read that you spent a period of time working there. What kind of stuff did you do for them?
It was pretty cool, actually. It was we made prints for Chuck Close, so I would they were like oil painting prints. So it's hard to explain, but like you know how all his portraits are like gridded. So we would have giant charts that we would read with all these palettes mixed, and you would carve stamps of 3 different sizes, like a dot this big, a dot like this big, and a dot like this big. And like there would be different layers, and you would like stamp them all and like layer them. And these were like $30,000 Chuck Close prints. And I would just sit around like all day, like carving tiny circles out of felt and like sticking them all, like putting them on dowels and stuff. But yeah, like it taught me a lot. It taught me like about like craftsmanship. It taught me how to care about how work is done. Like even if it's not necessarily your own, there should always be like a level of like excellence that you're bringing to it, I guess, like, and care. So I thought it was a really valuable experience.
Awesome. And were you still doing your own work on the side while you were working there?
Yeah. I was working like you know, nights, weekends, and just those were the days of Tumblr. So I was like submitting to like Tumblr things and like submitting to like any group show that I could. And when there was a group show, I would like put in all the work that they would let me put in, or I would even offer to like paint a mural if there was like a little wall, you know, just something so you could stand out. And then that's how I got offered like other shows from like being in group shows. And then my illustration really wasn't taking off. Like, so I kind of decided just to focus more on gallery work because like I wasn't getting illustration jobs.
One thing I'm always curious about is how people start getting that exposure to the gallery world. Was it just constantly sending in submissions over and over again before they finally...
It was a combination of that. At Pratt too, you're like some of the professors, my professor Jordan Issop, he curates a lot of shows and he still does. And so when we were still in school, he curated this, like he did this thing where you paint on a Metro card or something. It's called like the Metro card show. So I did that. And then for my little Metro card, it was this little off-Broadway theater, and they like offered me a group show from like my little thing. And then I had a little group show from that. And then like someone saw that. So it's kind of all over. And then like he also did another group show but that's the thing, like that's why Pratt is also valuable, because like you never know who your professors are, and you should care about like it taught me to care about things like home. Like some people were like, oh, it's just homework, like who cares? But it's like if you do well on your homework assignment, these are like actual working professionals in the field. So like if you do try, they can like give you opportunities or open up opportunities to you. And if you take those opportunities, you can try and run with them. Not everything leads to something, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes back to what you were saying about just making the best of the experience that you have in front of you. You know, it is whatever you make of it. It sounds like you made the best of that opportunity. You mentioned that you moved to LA shortly after that, and one of the things that you mentioned, in addition to just your best friend moving over, was that you were showing more in LA. So I'm kind of curious what your perspective is as far as how the art community compares what you experienced in LA versus what you experienced in New York. Like how did that differ for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's also hard for me to like fully judge the New York art scene because, first of all, I'm sure a lot has changed since I lived there. You know, like 8 years is a long time. And then also when I was new, I was still like up and coming. So I think like your experience is going to be different at different levels in your career. But I will say that in LA, I think a lot of the galleries here are kind of more open to showing lowbrow artwork in a still like serious and professional setting, whereas in New York it's still very much like the established like fine arts community. I feel like there's still like all the Chelsea galleries that you're like never getting into unless you like, you know, like you have like an MFA from like Cooper Union or something, and you have like a huge thesis, you know, but like I feel like out here there's just like kind of more opportunities in a gallery setting for the kind of work that I do too.
That makes sense. Since you moved to LA, you know, have you been pretty active in the art community and socializing with other artists, attending shows, stuff like that?
Yeah, Yeah, it's been really great meeting so many artists and galleries out here. I feel like everyone's been pretty like cool and welcoming, and yeah, I love it out here. It's been great.
Looking at your CV over the course of your career since you started showing, it seemed like you had at least a show a year, and even in the early parts of your career, more frequent than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Has that been like a difficult pace to keep up with, or like how is it comfortable for you?
Yeah, I mean, like like I have problems like having that work life balance. Like I also I prefer to work late. I'm like a night owl, so sometimes I'll be staying up till like 4 to get things done and stuff. But I think you can do that pace when you're young, when you're like in your 20s, you have like infinite energy. But I am starting to try and say, like, I don't need to say yes to everything like now at this point. So like I am trying to like focus maybe on like less on volume and more on like, making like really thoughtful work when I do make it for a show. But yeah, I'm definitely trying to at least plan my shows a little more, like not like so many in a year. It was kind of killing me.
Has that been hard to say no to opportunities? Because I think that's probably a difficult thing to do a lot of times.
Yeah. And I don't know. And like money is also always a factor too, because gallery work, it's really expensive to do. Like I make a living like from being able to balance gallery work and illustration work, because illustration work is like your bread and butter, like gallery work, you only get half of what you sell for, and there's like net 30, net 60, and you spent the whole like half a year making the work, investing in the work, so you're really not like, if you do the math on what I make per hour on my paintings, it's not good. It's like $2 an hour. But like, that's not why you get into art, to like have a good salary or something. So you kind of just got to like do other things to make that up.
And so you mentioned your illustration work, because I wanted to ask you a little bit about the commercial side of your practice. You've done work with clothing brands like RCVA and Vans. You've done commissioned murals. You do editorial illustrations. I guess, how do these illustration jobs usually come to you? Is it something that you seek out? Do the people come to you, or how do you land those jobs, I guess?
Yeah, a lot of it has been them coming to me. But sometimes you can reach out to people if you like what you're doing. But in the beginning, it was a lot of them reaching out to me after seeing what I had done in the gallery. Do you like that part of your practice? I do.
Do you like the challenge of implementing somebody else's ideas, I guess?
Yeah, I love how it challenges you in a different way that your own like fine art and art practice does. It feels really satisfying to be able to make something that works for somebody else, and in a way that maybe you wouldn't necessarily do it or have thought of doing it. It's kind of fun to have to like challenge yourself to think like someone else, or to fulfill a need for someone else.
And how much of your own, thumbprint are you able to put on the work when it's, for somebody else like that?
I mean, when they reach out to me, they want work by me. So it's always going to look like my stuff. Like if you don't like the way I draw women, you're not getting a differently drawn woman. Like I'm not going to give you a photorealistic portrait suddenly.
Right,
but, yeah, like I definitely do have to like also consider like what the client wants, or like sometimes I've been asked to like kind of soften features, or like, like change poses a little to be a little less aggressive. But like, like it's like working with someone. So they want your input, but you also have to like listen to what they need to, and like what their customer base is. So
are there kinds of work that you just won't do, or maybe companies that you have turned down because they just don't align with your value system or something? Like, what's the criteria for what you will or won't work on?
I mean, it usually has to do with like what their deadline is for my schedule, and then like what their budget is. Is it like worth my time to do, especially given the deadline? Like if it's a really short deadline, then I'm going to need like a better price because I'm dropping everything to like work like 1 day straight and finish something for, so like there are like a lot of factors that like go into whether or not I accept a job. I haven't really had any like horrible, evil, like Sackler money come approach me for a job. So I really haven't had that moral conundrum. But I will say I don't know how I'd react because, man, inflation is fucking brutal here in the city. And it is very hard to make a living off your art. So like I've had some people who are like have been like mad that like I took a job with a company because like they said that company had terrible customer service, and one time I tried to reach out to them and they never got back to me, and I'm like, so what? I'm supposed to turn down I'm supposed to turn down a job, like a paying job for my rent so I can live and eat, like because you don't like their customer. Like I'm not gonna like do that, but like I'd like to think if I had an evil corporation offer me a boatload of money, I'd say
Yeah, that's a whole different level of disagreement. So is it hard for you to balance your time with working on these illustration projects, which you said earlier pay a significant proportion of your yearly income, while also working on your gallery shows, which take an enormous amount of your time?
Oh, it's so hard. And I'm like the type of person where I like to do things one at a time. Like some people can like start 5 paintings, like have things going in the studio, like work in whirlwind. I'm like, I read one book at a time. I do one painting at a time. Like and like sometimes my schedule just does not allow for me to do that. So it can be hard for my brain to switch into like, okay, I'm painting mode, but then got to finish this illustration on Monday and then go back into the painting. So I'm still like figuring out that balance mentally.
Yeah. So, I mean, long term, do you feel like it's something you'll always do, where you'll have this kind of divide between your commercial work, or would you like to someday move away from it if you're able to?
I feel like I would always kind of want to still do, because it's fun. It's fun to do different jobs and different things and see your work in different ways. Like I love painting and I love seeing my work. Like my paintings are like the thing I care most about in my practice, but it's still really fun to paint like a goofy mural for someone, or like do it like a stupid t-shirt. And then like you see someone wearing the t-shirt randomly. That's really fun too. Yeah. It's like, it's fun to see your art out there in the world and more than just like a kind of like sterile or private setting,
That makes sense. So let's dive into the work itself. And you have a very distinctive style that I really appreciate. And so I want to start with just your use of color, because I found it interesting, the fact that you weren't super comfortable with color early. And now I think color is a real important trademark of your work, and it has made it like immediately recognizable. Like what goes into your choice and your use of color, and has that evolved over time? Does color have a particular importance to you?
Yeah, I mean, I like how there's that dichotomy between the darkness of sometimes of what I paint and the super like bright colors. I think it makes it like an interesting kind of effect, that something there looks cheerful, but when you actually look at it, it's quite morbid. Like I do like that effect. But for me, colors, like it's very like what I'm feeling at the moment. I never like plan out a palette for a piece or something. I can tell by looking at my work, like, oh, I was into that color at that time. Oh, I was into that. But like, it's kind of all just like very intuitive and unplanned. I kind of just go with whatever color I'm feeling.
Interesting. And looking back at like the evolution, so I tend to look through people's portfolio from early years to later, and you can definitely see how your use of color has changed, especially like your early 2013 work, like when you were just starting out. It didn't have as much, not as much pinks and purples, not as vibrant. It seemed like 2015, 2016-ish, it started to shift a bit more into what you're doing now. Was that a real conscious thing, or it sounds like not? It sounds like it's very intuitive and just what your personal taste changed.
Yeah, like around 2013, so that was about right when I graduated. I was like really into folk art. So that's why everything was so warm. I had all those like warm tones and like the warm brick reds and like, but then, you know, like I think as you kind of start to get older and define your own voice, so then I just found myself kind of more drawn towards like, because I had been doing a warm temperature. So then for the longest time, I was doing like, I just started doing cool temperature paintings. And like, I feel like now I'm kind of starting to get back into like warm temperature paintings. But like, I feel like there's always going to be that kind of like, oh, I've been doing this for a while, so now let me try that, you know?
Yeah. In addition to color, you know, you often make rich use of patterns, which I really like. I think it contributes to the detail-oriented nature of your work. I guess, why do you feel that you're attracted to these types of patterns? And does that in some way tie back to, you know, your childhood, or just is there a story around your focus on patterns?
Yeah, I think I'm just drawn to, I'm definitely drawn to patterns because my mom, the textiles major, and so I grew up, like, she was very into quilts, always brought us to see like quilt displays, or like super into like Native American art. And like my grandfather, he used to have an antique store, and it went bankrupt, but we kept all the old antiques from it. So like I kind of grew up like seeing like beautiful like Chinese screens, like, you know, like all the blue and white vases. So I think just like seeing it all around me as a kid, and I'm just like, I've always wanted, like, I love like Swedish design. I love like that like minimalist, like clean, but like I know like who I am is like a person with a ton of shit, you know? So there's like what you want to be, and then who you really are. And I feel like I'm just like naturally, I like kind of put like a bunch of like pattern, like I just feel the need to like fill up or like make tiny like detail things.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so diving a little bit more into the themes that you work with, because you mentioned, you know, it definitely has a very bright exterior and appearance, but sometimes the themes are very strong and, you know, morbid or violent in some ways. But a cornerstone of your work is the focus on, you know, strong feminine figures. I guess, why do you feel like you've historically had such a strong, I mean, you'll have men in your images from time to time, but it's very clear that your main focus is, you know, strong, fierce, feminine figures. Why do you feel that it is?
I think you're like drawn to paint, like people are naturally kind of drawn to paint themselves in a way. So like my figures, they're not me, but they're also like who I want to be or who I wish I was sometimes, or like, or they're kind of like people who like, they have characteristics I admire or characteristics I'm like fearful of. But I think paintings are just a reflection of yourself, and I'm a woman. So I feel just naturally drawn to paint women, and I want to paint them in a complex way. Like I feel like women haven't always been depicted in the most thoughtful way throughout like art and media, like in a history. So I don't know. I feel like now is the time where like we're given this more of an opportunity to really explore who we are, like with our own voices. And it just feels like natural to paint badass women.
And so are the characters often abstractions of yourself or things that you aspire to, or are they sometimes abstractions of other people in your life?
They're definitely both. Yeah, like I'm naturally not I'm not like a super dominant type person, you know, like I'm not like the person who's going to be like, oh, I'm the one in charge or I'm taking lead, but like I do like admire like assertiveness and like strength in other people. And so like I want to paint like dynamic characters like that. And like I'm no shrinking violet either. So I feel like they're also like they're kind of enhancements of myself, like what I wish I could be in my full form or something.
Right,
I don't know. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And you know, while your work does often kind of dive into some of the more routine aspects of life, you'll also have very adventurous stuff going on. Sci-fi adventures, jungle adventures, very cinematic is the word that came to mind when I was looking at a lot of what you've created over the years. I guess, what do these types of exotic settings and adventurous scenes represent to you in your work? Is it allegorical in some way, or what's the story behind it?
Yeah. Like a lot of it can be allegorical. That's why I feel like inspired by mythology a lot. And I think I like the idea of making something that's not quite of this world. So you can still like, it still has infinite possibilities, but it is slightly grounded in our reality. So we can like connect to it and, you know, still feel like the stories are ours. So I think I try and always find that balance between like making a fantastical world, but there are still like very real elements that like make you feel like connected to what's happening in the story.
In the context of those stories, how do you seem to make heavy use of symbology at a more granular level too, while you're kind of building these scenes out. Is that a very conscious kind of intentional choice, your use of symbols, or is it something that is more subconscious and intuitive as you're, building the composition?
It's definitely a combination of both. Like sometimes I'll specifically include flowers that mean something, that like affords or like sometimes things are personal symbols to me and like they may not mean the same thing to everyone, but like sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They can be read both ways. Like I like leaving things up to other people to interpret too, but like I think it's good to find that balance between like making things that are really deeply personal to you, but like things that can also like connect to like other people too. So yeah.
And so, you're obviously no stranger to mature subjects. Some violence sometimes, BDSM, sex, masturbation, stuff like that. I guess, do you distinguish those types of themes as being explicit or should be considered a different sort of theme than any of the other themes that you deal with? Or is it just another storytelling device that you use just like any other storytelling device?
I mean, I think it's all just like life, like I think that humans and like our experience, it's really complex. There's like no one way that a person is. There's like no one way to experience sex. There's no one way to like experience death or life or violence. And like all of those like messy parts are still part of like what make us us. So yeah. I don't necessarily see that as like another subject. I just think that I'm like willing to look at like all of it.
Yeah. And I think that's what separates you in a lot of ways is the fact that you're not shying away from it. These are real things that happen in real life.
Yeah. And like we've all like I'm not like pro violence or anything. I don't think that's what my pieces are. I'm not trying to glorify violence, but I do like feel like we can all recognize that like all of us have at some point in our lives like felt like, oh my God, I just like fucking like, or like we felt afraid of someone doing that to us too, like on the other end. So I think there's just like, there's that. And I think that's an interesting part of like what it is to be a human. Like someone who can be so kind can also be like terrible at times. So it's just like, I'm like, why wouldn't I look at that too?
Yeah. Because of the sometimes mature nature of your work, have you had to deal with censorship? Especially on like social media, where
all the time.
They're super like puritanical and you're sensitive about these types of things.
Yeah.
What has it been like to deal with that?
It fucking sucks because I guarantee you that kids are not going to art for their porn. Like they're going to look at porn for their porn, and guess what? The internet's thing, so they're getting all their porn. Like you don't need to worry about my painting of an obviously cartoon woman, but it's been like kind of rough navigating that because it's hard to like social media is a tool to share your work, I feel like, and if you can't even share your work, like that's one less tool. And like it's also affected like the jobs I've gotten, like the jobs that have been able to go forward. It's been a whole thing.
At any point in your career, have you ever felt either external pressure or internal pressure to self-censor just for those reasons to make it easier? Or like, I feel like that could be stifling in a way if you get overly preoccupied by that,
Yeah. I think I knew that people wouldn't be like always okay. Like, I think I've made that decision. And I think because it's like, it feels like such a big part of my personal voice and my art, I'm not going to like compromise on it. And like, I know that that's going to affect like my commercial money making abilities. Like, Disney's never going to hire me. Like, Campbell's is never going to hire me. Like, I actually, I work with someone, and like, they had a company that saw that my thing that they had worked on me with, and they were like, you've got to take that down, just that image, if you're going to work together. So like, it even affects the people I work with, you know, like I've had like companies not want to make my products because they're like, we don't do that, we're a family-based company, or whatever that means. Like, I'm like, kids suck on nipples all the time, that's how they get milk. I'm like, they have nipples, everyone has nipples, it's fine. But like, you know, it's just like, but like, I know that's going to always be a factor, but also I know the kind of work that I like and that I respect, and the kind of work I want to try and make. So I'll just make my bed and lie in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, for the subset of people that you do come across that have problems with it, I think there's a whole other group of people that respect the fact that you are sticking to your guns and your creative voice and not compromising.
Yeah. And some of my favorite art is art that like it makes you like be like, whoa, what's that? You know, like I like the best art is art that isn't safe, you know? So, or in my opinion, art is very subjective. So,
right. So diving into your process a little bit, I guess, how do you usually arrive at your, ideas for new pieces? Do you have like a daily sketchbook routine? Do you have other kind of brainstorming activities?
I have, sometimes I'll just like, I'll see something or I'll get an idea, and I have like this master list where I'll just write down like a brief description of, and like sometimes I'll just like see an image and I'm like, oh, that would be cool if I did this or this. It's like very like kind of random, like I don't sit down and sketch for ideas. Like, I have an idea and then I start like sketching it out.
Okay. And once you have that solid idea, how do you develop the composition from there? Do you like really refine? Do you take it all the way to like a refined ink drawing? Do you do some digital compositions? How do you develop it?
First I do like a really tiny thumbnail, like rough thumbnail on grid paper, where I like kind of like just like figure out where like how I want people, like kind of like that or like that, and like generally kind of what I want the composition to be. And then I get my panel that I'm working at, and I draw the same size on tracing paper, and I make a final tracing paper drawing that I'll then use to transfer onto my gessoed panel. So I figure everything out on the tracing paper drawing, and I have to draw it all in reverse because, you flip it and then draw. So it's kind of a pain in the ass too that way. And then you end up drawing, sometimes I'll draw the same image 3 times, because you have to trace it and then redo it. But I feel like I'm very like I'm fastidious and kind of like old fashioned, like horrible at tech. So like, I'm sure there's like a faster way to figure this out, but like, I do things how I do things, and I like that at the end of every piece, I have like a tracing paper drawing of the painting. So yeah.
And like reverse, I feel like that would be hard for me. Obviously, I'm not a professional artist, so maybe it's not hard for everybody. But like conceptualizing the thing and then drawing that in reverse.
Well,
like,
what
is difficult?
I have the tracing paper, and then I loosely sketch based on the thumbnail, like where I think everything should go. And then I flip it over. And because I already figured out where everything should go loosely from the other composition, then when I flip it, at least I know generally where everything could be. And you just keep on flipping as you go to make sure that things don't look weird in reverse.
That's amazing. And what about the colors and the patterns that we talked about earlier? Obviously those are key aspects of your work. Do you have those all figured out up front before you start painting, or is it something that develops as you go?
Yeah, it's all just decided as I go. Like, sometimes I'll draw out the pattern, 'cause if it's going to be a crazy pattern, I like plan it out. But I never like plan colors or anything. I kind of just like pick them as I go and like pick what I want the main color to be and then build off of that.
Okay. And so other than the patterns and the colors is, once you start on the painting, painting on the panel, do you usually have everything else pretty locked down, or is there still evolution that happens?
Pretty much, unless it needs to be changed. Like if something looks better while I'm working on it another way, I'll go in and change that. But I'm pretty like locked in. Like I like figuring out where things go and like having everything like placed just so.
Yeah. One like process aspect of your work that I've seen change, it seemed like it was that early 2013 period, you were doing resin as well. You were using resin to kind of put a glossy coat over the top of the piece. I guess, how did your process evolve away from that? Was that a conscious kind of an intentional shift? Or?
Yeah, it was. I had started using resin because in college, a professor introduced me to it, Kenichi Hoshini, and it works really well for the paintings I was doing at the time because my paintings were like lots of areas of flat color, like it would also like do this thing with the neons I used where it would kind of like create a glow because like the light would like bounce off in between. So that was nice. But as I started, like painting more and more and like getting better, like I started doing more textural effects and like more washes, and resin can really flatten that out. So that's kind of why I stopped, because I stopped doing just like mostly large flat areas.
Okay. Yeah. And so what is it about acrylic that you like? Because you mostly work in acrylic for your painted works. What is it opposed to like oil or watercolor? Or?
Yeah, I mean, oil just really wouldn't make sense for what I do. It takes so long, and you can, of course, like, like make it add things to make it dry faster. But like, I'm not doing a ton of like blending or like glazed skin tones or anything. So acrylic just feels like the natural decision, or acrylic wash, because it dries really quickly. You can get it like pretty flat, like with a few coats, but you can still do like painterly effects with just a little water. And like I kind of like all the terpenoid and stuff makes me nervous about oils, where they're like, never store your rags near the sun. I'm like, Jesus, like I don't want a fire breaking out if I put things in the wrong place. So like, I'm just like, yeah.
And some of those things could be really toxic too. I don't know. I mean, which kind of constrains where you're able to do your work even.
Yeah. You definitely need some good ventilation if you're painting with oils regularly.
And sometimes you also use markers. So like what goes into your decision of whether a piece is going to be painted with acrylics or drawn using markers?
I think it's just like what the show calls for, what I'm like, if it's like a show where it's a big show and I can decide like whether I'm doing paintings or drawings. They're nice because they're faster, but they're also nice because it's just like kind of switching gears. Like you approach an inked drawing differently than you would approach a painting. So sometimes it's kind of nice to just like mentally like change up the process and like be able to do something different.
Is there anything about the content of the image itself that might factor into the decision of whether or not to do marker?
Oh, definitely. Paint? Definitely. Like if I'm like doing something like Luke and I did a piece where we painted an ice sculpture with a buffet. That would be a piece you would want to paint, because like it like a painted ice sculpture looks so much cooler than like, whereas if it's a drawing, you can still like imply it, but I feel like some pieces, like the subject, like when it's painted, like if I paint things on fire too, and I feel like I'll still draw things on fire, but my big fiery pieces, I prefer to paint them because the fire just looks better painted.
Yeah. Are there any mediums that you'd like to explore someday that you haven't had an opportunity to?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to work with like ceramics more, or like clay more. That's really fun. I would love to design a fountain one day. That would be cool. I'd love to design do all the set designs for an opera one day. That's like one of my bucket list things. I really want to design like an opera, but like, yeah, we'll see.
I'm curious. You've mentioned that before. What is it about opera in particular that seems very different than sculptures and ceramics?
I love how like opera feels like it's like all of the art forms meeting as one for like just like the ultimate performance, you know, like it's like, cause it's like set for paintings. It's like singing. It's like sometimes there's dancing, you know, it's like music. There's like all of that. So I just love like the drama and escapism of opera, but then it's also like very like timeless problems that like humans still like we're still going through today. So it just really appeals to the drama queen in my soul.
So there's a call for all the opera directors out there.
Yeah, like, please, someone at the Met. No, that's like that's the one that would never hire me. They're like too big, but it would be cool.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your last show. You have a show that's just actually closing, I think, today at Super Chief, which was co-curated by you and Luc Pelletier. First of all, am I pronouncing his last name correctly? Because I've never...
That's how you would pronounce it correctly, but he just pronounces it Pelletier.
Okay.
Yeah. That is how you would pronounce it correctly for like French speaker, or like his dad's French Canadian. So
okay,
yeah,
okay. I've only ever seen it in print, so I wasn't sure. But the show is called Impending Doom, and like I said, it closes today. How do you like working on the curating side of the gallery experience? You know, you've obviously had a lot of experience showing as an artist side of that relationship, but do you like curating also?
It's not something I want to do regularly. It's hard. It's a lot of administrative stuff. Like this one was fun because I was curating it with Luke, and like we got to put in a lot of like our friends or artists we look up to and like admire. So that like that aspect was really fun. Like seeing all the work, like bringing together like maybe artists who you wouldn't necessarily always see showing together. That was really fun. But it is kind of like a huge pain in the ass, like dealing with all the emails and like organizing things, and like shows, they take like over a year to plan, you know, and then like if you're emailing with over 30 artists, it's like herding cats, you know, like everyone's terrible at their emails, including us. So it's like, you know, but it was fun, but it's definitely not a regular thing I need to do.
Yeah. Do you feel that it helped make you better at curating, having lived the artist side of that experience? Or did it make it worse because you're just not good at emails either?
Well, Luke, luckily, he dealt with a lot of the emails because he's like, I feel like I take like 30 minutes to answer one freaking email because I'm like, does this sound polite enough? But like, he'll just like pop it off and like not worry about it. So like, I let him handle it, but it's still like, I don't know, like I feel like knowing from the artist side, we just knew not to worry too much if we didn't hear back from certain people who were like, they probably got it. We'll check in once it's like closer to the deadline, you know, like, so we knew not to worry too much.
Okay, that's cool. What was Super Chief's role in putting the show together? Did they give you guys complete freedom to do whatever you want, and they just provided the space, or were they more involved putting the program together?
They let us, like, as far as like coming up with the roster, that was all us. But like also a lot of the people who we showed have shown with them before, so there was kind of that overlay, and then they helped a lot with install and like, you know, like the press releases and like doing all that stuff. But yeah, it was really great working with them. I've been working with them for almost since I graduated, so yeah, it's been a long relation.
Is it important to you to have that kind of strong gallery relationship in your career? Is it an important component to your practice?
I think it's important to have good working relationships with everyone you work with, even if it's just like a random like t-shirt client. I always try to be like as professional as I can be, and like always keep, like, even if things don't necessarily always end perfectly, you always want to keep it professional, because you never know where you'll be. You never know like when you'll need help too, so might as well be nice to everyone.
Yeah. I guess for this show in particular, the title of the show is Impending Doom. How did y'all, which, you know, I think is appropriate considering the world that we're currently living in, but how did y'all come up with that theme for the show? Is there a story behind it? I mean,
yeah, that was basically it. We were like, man, it fucking sucks right now. That was kind of like the vibe. I think Luke and I were just like smoking weed or something, and like we actually came up with we think another title, but we forgot to write it down, and so the closest like title that we could remember, we were like, it was like Impending Doom or something, but it was like something else, but we couldn't remember that. But then we were like, well, Impending Doom works too. So yeah.
Did you ever remember what the title was or what the original one?
Lost. No. Lost in a haze of smoke. And that's why I shouldn't be an ophthalmologist.
Right.
You do not want me near your eyeballs.
In another parallel universe, you became an eye surgeon.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't want to meet that bitch. She is stressed.
So you also had art in this show. So in addition to the challenge of kind of herding cats, as you said, to be the curator, you also had art in the show. Was that a challenge then, doing both of those things for this show?
Yeah, it was, but like I think also luckily when it is a big group show, there's a little less pressure, like my solo, I was like, for my last solo at Corey Helford last year, I was like dying trying to finish work in time. And this one, I was still like kind of painting down to the wire on my big painting, but I think the fact that there were like over 30 other artists, like I didn't have to make 10 pieces. I only made 3 pieces. So it felt much more doable compared to like the madness of last year.
And so speaking of madness and your solo, shows, let's talk about what you have coming up. What is with this last show under wraps? Like, what does the rest of 2023 look like for you?
Well, for this year, like as you pointed out, I've kind of been doing a big main show like every year since I graduated. So this is going to be my first year where I'm not doing that. Like I'm like, I've specifically said no to like anything that's like a 6-person show or smaller, because I just feel like this year I just want to like do more group work, not have like that huge pressure hanging over me, try and just like make some money, like try and like be able to do like not feel rushed when I make pieces as much, and also working with more galleries too, and like kind of having a little more fun with that, like not having everything feel so serious.
Right. So do you know when your next solo might be?
I'm not going to do a solo for a while.
Okay.
But my next bigger show, I have a show that's going to be 6 people lined up for the end of 2024 in Boston, and I've never shown before at Boston. So nice. I'm excited about that. And then the year following that, 2025, is when I have a 2-person show that I'm doing with Corey Helford again, and Messy Desk. So that should be pretty fun, pretty exciting. And like 2-person is still going to be big, but Corey Helford, like I'm not sure if you've been there, but like they have 3 galleries within their 1 gallery. And so I'm in the second biggest gallery, and it's not as big as the big gallery, but it's still right. Quite big. So
yeah, they have a lot of space. I mean, I guess when you talked about the fact that you kind of wanted to slow down a little bit and focus on maybe group shows and a variety of group shows. Do you approach the work that you do for these group shows significantly different than how you approach the work you would do for a larger body of work that is for a solo show or a 2-person show?
It's not like significantly differently, but I think I allow it to be like more of a singular piece, like existing by itself. Like it's like I don't worry about, like I worry about like what the show theme is, like not about like what the overarching connection between the works can be. So it's more that.
When it is for a larger solo show, do you tend to define that larger theme up front and then kind of work within that those guardrails, or do you just start working and then see what develops from that and that defines the show theme?
Yeah, I definitely do the second one. I definitely I start the work maybe sometimes with a vague idea, but not like often. And then I think just as you do the work more and more, it kind of makes itself apparent what the show is about.
Awesome. So anything else that you have coming up that you want to put on people's radars, events, print releases, stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm going to be in a group show in London that's going to be at Stolen Space Gallery. It's a still life show. So I think this is going to be my first real piece in a London show too, which is exciting. And I'm designing t-shirts for them too, for the gallery. So
nice. When is that? When does that happen?
That's going to be in July, I think. It opens like July 12 or something. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, Stolen Space is a good place. Are you going to go over there for the opening?
No, because I'm just putting one piece in. So, yeah, I wish I could go, but...
So where can people find you online so they can stay up to date with all that you got going on?
Yeah, you can find me only on Instagram because that's the only social media I have these days on at Liu-Wong, KLIUWONG, or I have a website, Kristen Liu Art.
Awesome. Very cool. So last question, and this is something that I like to ask everybody. Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
They should be alive?
I mean, logistically, I think that's how that would probably be best.
I'm like, we're not thinking theoretical dream artists? Ooh, I don't know. Hold on.
Might be the hardest question I asked.
Yeah, because I don't have like a name lined up. Oh my God. Well, this is going to be cheating because I'm like, I have a piece of hers hanging up right now. And she's like the only artist I can think of, but she is really amazing. So I would like to see like Rebecca Morgan. Her stuff is really cool. I love her paintings. I'd love to hear more about her process. And I know she's a teacher too. So that would be cool. But yeah.
Very cool. I mean, that reminded me, normally I would close out at this point, but that reminded me of one question. With the history of teaching and appreciation for teaching art, do you think that's something you'd want to do, even on the side, just to teach a class on art?
Yeah, I would love to. I taught my first class at Blue Rooster Art last year where I did like a little painting demo. And I thought that was like fun to kind of like dabble in that. So yeah, one day I would love to try my hand at teaching. I don't know how good I'd be, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's in the blood, so I'm sure you'll do great. Kristen, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been an absolute delight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we'll cut there. What'd you think?
Okay. That was cool.
So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Kristen. I really love how distinctive Kristen's style is. Everything about it is immediately recognizable. One component that serves as a real trademark of her work is her use of color. It's so unique, and it's wild to think about the fact that there was a point in time where she wasn't at all comfortable with doing anything with color, that she was only drawing black and white ink drawings of engines of all things. And the fact that blossomed in her while she was in college is such a wonderful story of growth. But her use of color has also not remained static either. It's fascinating to see how her palette has organically ebbed and flowed over the years, slowly as her personal tastes change. Her use of color is also interesting for the fact that she pointed out about it being an interesting contrast to the sometimes morbid themes that's contained within her work. And not just morbid, but complex. I really like the way that she described it in that context. Complex. People are complex. Relationships are complex. Sex is complex. These are all extremely human experiences, and Kristen just isn't shying away from that fact. In fact, she wants to shine a spotlight on it and use it to tell a story. Keep an eye out for her piece in the Stolen Space group show, opening very soon after this show should debut. And be sure to follow her Instagram for news about the other various shows that she has coming up in the future. So thanks again to Kristen for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. And just a reminder, one big way you could help out if you're really enjoying the show would be to check out the show's Patreon. You can find all the details on patreon.com/artaffairs. And as always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairs.podcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.